Okay. Hi, everyone. For me, it is December the 31st, early in the morning, and heading into 2022, and I wanted to share my thoughts about that with you. What was strange is, as I wrote, because I wrote, you have to put a file name, right, before you start making the video, and I was writing 2022 in the file, but I first wrote 2020. And Matt did this, I think, in one of the previous videos. He meant to say 2022, and he said 2020. And I've already begun thinking like this. It's almost like the year 2020 hasn't ended. That, like, there's each year kind of has a demarcation point, I guess you might say, where a particular year's ended, certain events have ended, and you move on to the next year. It's something new. And since 2020, we didn't go to something new in 2021. It's like we haven't had two actual years. We've had one long 24-month year is what we've really had. And I think that's really interesting from the standpoint of the calendar. Our calendar is continuing. Our calendar is moving 2021, 2022. But energetically or what's the word I'm looking for? Just from the standpoint of continuity or change or transformation, nothing's changed at all. And from that standpoint, I don't think 2022 then, because if I'm writing 2020, it's telling me already at some subconscious level that 2020 will continue another year at least. I don't know if I would be able to write or do 2023. I'm not sure. So the video here will be up on YouTube and Free Voice. I don't know when, because Rob is still doing it. He hasn't given all the details on how I can get the videos up on freevoice.io yet myself. So there tends to be a bit of a lag. The videos will appear on BitChute. They just go automatically. I have a BitChute channel. I should put that in the comment section below. I don't actually post there, right? When they go to YouTube, they just go to BitChute. So I thought I should sit here and talk to you a little bit about what I see coming up for, well, it's not, now I see it's not 2022, it's the continuation of 2020 into the third year. And so I want to talk a bit about that and what's really, I'm not going to make predictions because you really can't. What you do, and this is even really what psychics do in some cases, they're not really looking into the future. What they're looking at is trends when it comes to stuff like this. When they're looking at the year ahead, they look at trends, they look at possibilities, they look at likelihoods. And so you predict 5 highly likely scenarios that could happen. So like usually 2 of them will hit anyway. They're likely to happen. If you just have particularly a study of history and are very versed on current events, you can predict the trends and where things are going, and you're going to hit 2 out of 5, almost guaranteed. And that's kind of what the psychic does. They throw out first a lot of generalized things, like the likelihoods, where they're going to hit 2 out of 5. And then they can point to those. Look, see, I said that, which they did, but it's highly likely. And everyone then ignores the 3 other generalizations that didn't happen. Then you can throw in the sort of out there, the more out and left field stuff that if it hits, well, bonus. That's a bonus check mark because you've already got 2 check marks of your prediction. And so I'm not going to make predictions, right? I don't want to say I'm predicting 2022. What I'm looking at is likely trends, things that this last, again, we got to call it 24-month period, has showed us where we are headed for the next 12 months. I don't want to call it the next year or the next 12 months of time. And I've got another piece about time I'm going to add at the end of this, but okay. what are some likelihoods we're dealing with? A high likelihood, because there's so many reasons this could happen, and that would be some sort of food shortage slash high rising prices slash, big problems with the food supply. And it doesn't take much of a genius to see that all you need is various disruptions. And there's so many different ways you can have a worldwide disruption, from war, from borders closing, from electrical failures, from, financial breakdowns, like whatever. There's like 20 different things that can create climate, a weird climate, a bad crop, whatever, right? You've got all of these things that can. So that would be high on the list of likelihood that we're going to see in the next 12 months. It's going to be some sort of issue for sure with the food supply. That would be almost guaranteed in my book. But again, it's not a prediction, and I can't. It's going to happen in April. No, I don't know. It might not happen. The point is that's likely. What else are we looking at as likelihoods? This whole, what do we call this, right? The worldwide insanity, that's just going to continue. And because it can't stop. It can't stop now because humans have reached the insanity point themselves. They've already, there's a video I'm going to post below. It's like 40 seconds that Carl Vernon had on his YouTube channel. It's like you got to go like 20 seconds in, and it's these women sitting, I guess, at a Christmas party inside these plastic bubbles in somebody's house, obviously one of their families, and they're in these giant bubbles as they eat their Christmas dinner. Like, this is where a lot of the human population mentally is at. They've reached this point of actual not being able to function anymore in a regular, natural way. They've literally gone. And the brainwashing, which we'll call it that, we don't want to call it propaganda now because it's more brainwash. The brainwashing is so strong on people, and the level of non-questioning is so strong. Lack of critical thinking is so strong that I don't think they can ever be rolled back. You can say, oh, if they just get enough information. No. Enough information won't do it. They're 4 billion people are over the edge already. They're not coming back. Half of the world's population will not be able to, or it will be such a difficult rollback. And then you've got to take out all the extra poisons that have been put in their body over the last year, right? So all of that has to be, which is affecting the brain and the DNA and everything else. So if they're over the edge now, they're not rolling back. Once someone has crossed the insanity line, I don't see them coming back. So that means it doesn't matter how let's say the 1 billion who are pushing against the world situation, 1 billion cannot overturn the 7 billion, and when the 7 billion have the army and the police on their side, it's just it'll be a long, drawn out, protracted mess. Is all it's going to be. I mean, we have to be honest about this. It's something so major would have to happen. Something so like 10 levels up on the scale would have to happen to start overturning this level of insanity in the average population, and I don't see that happening. The average population is going to demand, in a sense, more and more and more of agreement. They'll be just agreeing more and more with whatever the governments around the world do or tell them to do. The agreement will be strong, and the antagonism against those who want to or choose not to follow it it's going to get even stronger. Don't expect, for those of you who are under pressure from work, family members, businesses, life, whatever, don't expect that's going to get any easier. It's going to get harder. The corner you're getting pushed into is going to be more and more. and it's going to blow. I mean, you push in a sense a wounded animal into a corner, and eventually it's got nowhere else to go. And that's also the danger point for this whole scam that the story we're under is right now the average human is not like in the corner yet. They're, they've been wounded but they're still in the room. They're still in the house. They still got room to go. They can still maneuver around. Anybody, once they get backed into a corner and have nothing left to lose, become not only dangerous but powerful. Once you have nothing to lose, so you already know death is around the corner anyway, then there's no, your fear of acting is eliminated. So you've also got this issue where, on one sense, being pushed in the corner means the possibility of annihilation, because some when they go in the corner will just lay down and that'll be it. Others will respond with a power that they didn't know they had. And yeah, if 1 billion wounded animals in the corner all act at the same time, maybe, but I don't see the year 2020 stopping. I see 2020 cruising through for another 12 months. Now, we may be getting added on to that. So once you add the food, if you have food shortages, I mean, that's going to change the mindset. War is now right on the table, right? Like we are really close to, and that's a great way. Like I had said in a previous video a while back, that what's really needed is some militaries around the world to step in and sort of take over, to wipe out the systems and take over and set the record straight and start fresh. But if you instead put all the world's armies at focus on some crazy war somewhere, some giant conflict, worldwide conflict, militaries don't have time to do that. Their focus is now somewhere else. So that could be a giant distraction, similar to, I've looked more into, again, the Laurel Canyon situation. I've talked a bit about the 1960s and how this sort of radicalized people almost took down the U.S. government, which is true. They almost did. And I call it the hippie movement, which is actually incorrect. There was a movement. You might call it an anti-war movement, or what do you want to call it? A freedom movement, I guess, is the best way to describe it. They wanted to take back the country in the 1960s, and thankfully, you had a lot of still free press, so a lot of independent reporters, musicians, entertainers were backing this. A CIA operative program produced almost the hippie movement, which was seemingly the same thing, but now with a drug focus, now with a focus on the personal expansion of the mind, as opposed to what the movement was originally about. So the movements kind of intermingled then and began to warp each other, and this force that was moving to potentially take down the government was wrapped into this other thing. And then once the meditation movement was brought in from the East as the final nail in that coffin, right? Once they brought in the meditation movement with this idea of all you need to do is sit down, be quiet, don't do anything, everything stopped. The whole we need to take over, we need to change the systems of the world stopped. And all of a sudden, cocaine and disco was ruling the 70s, and it was all forgotten. But they were close. They had this groundswell, this really big energy. And it was important because there was a medium to present it for a while. TV and music and all sorts of things. It's not like if we... That's one of the reasons that this isn't going to change, is because the average person, particularly the youth, anyone under 30, so in their 20s, or the youth in their teens and young, they have particular we'll call them heroes almost, but they're all sports figures, athletes, musicians. That's just who's the way our society's been structured. So if the message is all coming the same from all of these people, if there's no dissenting voices in any of them, then this whole group, which is where the energy for change comes from, right? As someone who's 18, 20 years old and can look ahead and see 50 years of what they've got to live in, they're the ones who have the energy and the will to change something. Someone who's 65, like, what's the point? They've already lived their life, and so they just want to cruise out of this thing. Yeah, they'd like to leave their kids and their grandkids something better, but still, they don't have the energy to do it. You've got to be 18, 22. You've got to have that vitality still, and you've got to have that inner fire and that realization of where your world is going, and you don't want to be a part of it. You're willing to do something about it. And so because that block is so also really controlled and brainwashed, that's another reason why I say nothing's going to change, because that's where the change has to come from. It has to come from the youth. I used to be a big sports guy, right? I watched a lot of pro sports in my course of my life. I've stopped completely. Zero. None. Because of the complete compliance of these people, where there's none of them are critically thinking. Same with any musicians, any actors. Where's the the Smothers Brothers? Where's all of these people from? You could say whatever side they were on, was CIA operating with them, whatever. But at least there was still an anti-voice out there from people that were in people's living rooms that the average person could listen to. There's nobody like that now anywhere in the mainstream. They're all gone, or not that they're gone. They're not there. None of them are presenting anything but what they're told to present. That's why 2020 is not going to end. It's going to continue. So we've got likelihood of a war. I would actually put that at 50%. I would have it that high. Whether it's U.S. and Russia, U.S. and China, U.S. and both of them, China and India, whatever. It's just there's these powder kegs all over the place, and it's if things look like they're skipping a beat and they're going into real dangerous. I mean, remember what happened in 2019, right? When all this first began, the yellow vest protests in places like France was almost at the tipping point. I mean, France was getting to the point of, they were like a step away from the French Revolution, number 2. That's how close it was. Like the intensity and the raw emotion of the people had risen to such high level, and the numbers were high. All of a sudden, this thing happens. Everyone's locked inside your house, can't go out, can't protest, and it ends. And all of a sudden, it's gone. It's disappeared. It's ended. Kind of, it's almost like this has been brought on as a immediate response to the fact that a number of European countries might have fallen in 2019, 2020. That if this current situation hadn't been started, certain governments would have fallen, countries would have fallen to the people. There would have been revolutions all across Europe. And so you always have to see that there's these guaranteed sort of responses in the background ready as a countermeasure. So if the next groundswell, if it certainly looks, I think that's what a lot of this military stuff is about. If it looks like the militaries of some countries are going to get edgy and make a move on their country, then the U.S. and Russia just go to war, and everybody's going to be focused on something else, and that will end. So again, getting out of it that way is going to be difficult. Okay, so that's 2 highly likely predictions. We've got a lot of people have been in the prediction world with whether it be a worldwide internet shutdown, a worldwide electronic grid shutdown. Yeah, these are all possible. Again, I don't think they're going to you're not going to do that unless you have a reason for it. So you'd have to know what is the exact reason for doing it. Like what is the end goal for putting that into play, and then you would know if the world situation is moving in a direction where the end result isn't happening, then you know, oh, it's coming. You know, we know they know that the influencers want this, but we're going this way, so expect the internet shutdown or the economic or the electricity shutdown, because they have to turn the whole thing in the other direction. So those are even lower on the list but again, those require a trigger. What's next on the list that they would be needed to do? What else kind of tells me about 2020? I would, yeah, 2020. See, I keep saying it. I'm saying it myself, 2020. Because where's my camera? For some reason, my camera stopped. I've frozen. There, so I had to restart because my camera froze for some reason. So yeah, I said it again, 2020. I really think 2020 is not ended. And so if a year hasn't ended, then what can you expect? Zero in the change, because one thing is when a year changes, there's a numeric change at least, right? And okay, we say we're supposed to be going into the year 2022. I'll say it correctly. Of course, we don't really know what year it is, and what does the year really mean anyway? Okay, all these other calendars have these various dates, like, right, the Jewish calendar and Chinese calendars 5,000 something, whatever. But it's still, well, what are they marking? What are they marking as year one? This is really important. What is year one in a calendar? There's year zero, because supposedly human life goes back, hundreds of thousands of years. So why would the calendar only start in like 5,000 years ago and that be year one? What's the particular year one date? And for us, we have this bizarre thing of it's not a celestial date. It's supposedly this birth of this biblical figure. Well, with no proof around any of it. And so I'm wondering if the calendar we use in the Western world is in some way accurate, that we really are moving into the year 2022. The question is, of what? 2022 of what? Was the year zero actually the beginning of the simulation? I've heard all sorts of talk that the simulation began in the 1800s, but it would make more logical sense that if that's true, if it really only started in like 1855, then there shouldn't be an 1854. 1855 should be year one. You know, it makes more sense that you're tracking the years of the simulation. So BC could mean like before computerization, you know, AD after demarcation, after detonation, after, anyway. So the year number, which is so arbitrary, could have some value if you understand the what it might really be marking as its start point. Now, of course, I don't take the 20. If there really are 2,000 plus years that the simulation's been running, of course, I don't trust any of the historical record of the 2,000 years. Whatever's actually happened in the simulation is completely different from what's really happened. That's for sure. But it also interesting means if that's true, that means everything older than 2,000 years didn't happen in the simulation at all. Right? Everything before year zero is in fact totally computer construct, totally totally a shadow of something of the original world before the simulation. which makes it interesting. So if you're tapping into ancient Greece or ancient Rome or the Toltec Empire or whatnot, you're actually maybe tapping into. You're not tapping into this actual world that we live in because it didn't happen in this world. You're then tapping into the other world, the world before this. And maybe that's why when I go to ancient Egypt or when I've been in Mexico and I'm at the older sites, not the newer sites, the oldest sites, the ones that I know are 10,000 years old, I feel like I'm in a different world. I feel like I've claimed that, okay, it's a world before the parasitic mind, but maybe just in this conversation, actually, I'm actually really am tapping into another world because I'm not tapping into something that happened in the reality I've come to know as reality. I'm tapping into a reality that's at some further point back there. That's one step up the one step up the you might say one step up the chain of worlds, one turtle up from where we are. I'm not actually tapping into this reality. And we may be seeing where we're headed, where this is actually moving, which is putting us into this metaverse, right? Which is putting us into this virtual reality world 24 hours a day where we'll literally become Neo in the pod in the first Matrix and we'll just be, our brain will just be functioning in this alter reality. Again, you have to step back. Is that what happened? Is this the original, is this the previous metaverse that we're in right now? And, we are really in the other pod and we have to track it back to get into the other reality. And you just, again, turtle on top of turtles. And how many turtles do you have to go up to get to or down or whatever to the foundation reality? Maybe it's down. Every turtle is placed on top. Every world is placed on top of the other one. That's what the Hopi and the Navajo say. So going down to below to the last turtle, the original turtle, the last one on the list. And is there a way to navigate where you don't have to go through 8 worlds or 10 worlds to get there? You don't have to go through 10 turtles. You can just. Anyway, that has nothing to do with moving into the new year. It's on my mind, so I'm sharing it. I guess one of the other principles that we're looking at is because 2020 isn't ending, because it didn't happen, it didn't change this year and it won't change next year, the monotony level is going to get more. It's going to get more and more frustrating, more and more monotonous, because at least that's one of the things of the seasons changing, right? You go through winter and it really sucks, and then you get spring and it kind of livens you up, and then you get the summer and you kind of live fully, and then you fall, you kind of slow yourself down, and you go into, you have this, it's a cycle. There's cycles that you're involved in. And that's the same with years. Every year will have its own rhythm, its own focus, its own, we all have known we've had years that were good years, we had years that were bad years. And there's the same with an energy of almost the whole planet. Certain years were good years, certain years were bad years, certain years were tough, certain years were easy. But there's been this, at least I think, a feeling of changeover, of newness, And if that's not happening, then you're just staying in winter, right? You can just look at it this way. We're kind of staying in, because this started in the winter of 2019, 2020. And if we really haven't changed out of that, that means energetically, we're still in winter. We're still in winter 2020. And that means the monotony of it, the depressive nature of the season isn't ending. It's still going on. And we'll keep continuing. So expect more monotony, frustration from the ones that haven't totally been zombied out. Because we have, you have the zombies already that are gone. We have the half zombies, the ones that have taken a step into zombie world, but they're not fully there. You've got the ones who are kind of almost stepping in. They're kind of just getting their foot in the door there. They all those could be pulled out with a little bit of work, but they could be pulled out. And then there's the ones who are fully outside and are, for now, entrenched in the ground outside. The ones that are in the zombie house are, yeah, they're gone. At least the ones who've just moved in the door that have a foot in and are in the hallway. You know, there's still, there'd be a lot of deprogramming, but it's still going to be, it's going to, for all the ones that aren't in the house though, for the other three groups, it's going to be the monotony and the frustration will just continue. And again, you're going to see more people breaking. You're going to see more mental breaks, not just like kids, especially. I mean, children who have gone through the last 2 years of this are going to be seeing more and more mental disturbance. That's guaranteed. You're going to see more and more kids doing stranger and stranger things, but you're going to see more and more adults do stranger and stranger things because they're going to be, the pressure is just going to be cracking people. The pressure of all this is just going to be mentally cracking people. So expect that and be ready. Be ready for unbelievably bizarre behavior. That I can almost guarantee. High likelihood you're going to see more and more nutty stuff. And it's not just going to be on the news or on somebody's YouTube channel. It's going to be in your own life and the people you're interacting with. So that you've got to have a plan for. When someone starts acting really weird, how are you going to deal with that? And it's the other side of it. If you're with somebody who's digging more and more into understanding what's going on the various levels of, they're looking into medicine and governments and aliens and transhumanism and whatever, they're going to be cracking too. But on the other side, it'll be cracking from seeing the level of the lie they've been under for so long. I had watched, there was a certain set of documentaries that I watched last night. I'll say the name of it because they really annoyed me. In Ancient Invisible Cities, I think was the name of the documentary. And the one on Egypt was just, it was offensive actually to me. I was offended by, again, the pharaohs and tombs and slaves and copper tools and, just presenting that mantra over and over again to the population of demystifying, depowerifying the ancient world to make it look like it's just done by a bunch of really ignorant, stupid people who happen to create some really cool thing here. Isn't it interesting? That's amazing. Haha, but boy, we're sure smart with our computers and our virtual reality compared to those idiots. And it was just, again, it was offensive having to see Zayawas still blasting his garbage on the TV screen. I had to turn it off. I just couldn't keep watching it. And it's another level. It just again showing that the lies become myth, and the myth becomes hard to overturn. So if you're going to start overturning myth within yourself, overturning the lies within yourself, it's going to be difficult. And if you're with somebody who's doing that, who's going through that process, expect them to be disturbed. Expect them to be cracking at times. Know that people around you, if they really start seeing through anything, again, the energies is going to make them very crackable. So keep that in mind as you go through the year, that you're going to have to be prepared for that. In case you're wondering, I'm spinning a microphone pouch, just keeping. Sometimes when I'm thinking, it's like if I do something else, particularly with my hands or whatever, it just, for some reason, helps me think. Just wondering what this spinning thing is on your screen. I guess I'm at the end of what I need to say. Thanks for everything in the last year, which is really 2 years. It's been a great journey, and I've been really appreciative for how much I've learned from making these videos, from having to really think about things and present them to you, and have to take some ownership of what's floating in my head and have to actually present it, even though I know I may find out I disagree with it in a week. At least I've had to get a handle on it. And thanks for all the information that's come my way. I just got one of the comments I got from the last video is mentioning what they're claiming to be the first Matrix movie, and I'm going to watch it like today. What was it called? Out. Oh, it was a 1985 movie. I'll put it in the comments because I can't remember the name of it. Outside of the Mind or something like that. But I'm going to watch it. It's supposed to be a sort of a poorly made, very cheaply made 1985 movie, but has like these layers of being in an artificial reality and the world tricking people into it. And so it's really, really interesting that sort of these ideas of Dark City and the Matrix are there in some movies 10, 15 years prior to that. They were so, it's like They Live. Almost nobody really bumped into They Live in 1988. It was like 10 years later people started bumping into it. That when the movie came out, no one paid any attention to it. And I think this movie is something similar. So Outside the Mind, I think is what it's called. But I'll put it in the comments. But yeah, thanks for the information like that shows up. Like I wouldn't have read Hilton Hodema if it wasn't for a comment. So I do see your comments, even though I don't necessarily respond to all of them because I just time factor. I just don't have time to make responses too often. But I do see them. I do actually see them, and I do act on some of them. I do actually check into things that are presented. So even though I don't respond to it one way or another, tell you I really like this or I really don't like this, it doesn't mean I didn't see it. So I'm really still appreciative of a lot of that you give me. Beyond that, yeah, we'll just go forward. The next video I do to start the year is going to be on the Paris expositions. I haven't done an exposition video for a long time. And I wasn't going to, but it's just because of all the work I did on Paris for that ending of the Southern France series that I had to bump into, again, La Belle Epoque and these two insane expositions of 1889 and 1900. So I'm gonna do that for you right after the new year, so we can look at what I should have looked at in the book, but I didn't, because I focused only on North America. But these two expositions are just wild, and so I'm going to do that. I've got a couple of interviews that are ready to go for the channel. I've got a couple that I'm doing, and then yeah, it's really begin to see what this new year is going to bring and what needs to be presented on this channel going forward. So thanks. Good luck in our continuation of 2020. Maybe at some point we'll get to a point where we can actually say the year finally ends and we actually are really going to have a new year and we're going to really have something change. It's not going to be this year. Sorry. I know there's a lot of hopeful predictions out there. There's a lot of hopeful YouTube channels. There's a lot of hopeful whatevers speaking through the historian's researching eyes. I see nothing right now indicating things are going to be any different, and if anything, it's going to get worse. Just the way it's going to be. So buckle up, prepare, do your best, stay connected with those you can stay connected with, keep clear, keep courageous and strong, and let's see if we can use all this to open an inner doorway, figure something out. I present all this not to depress anyone. It's just the more you can be mentally, at least mentally, not physically prepared, mentally prepared for what might come. The more mentally you can be prepared for it, the easier you can handle it, the easier you can find navigatable solutions for yourself. If things just throw into your doorstep, then you're going to just react. You're just going to respond. Often a reaction is not the best way to go. I was a hockey coach for a long time, and a lot of people around me used to say I'm very negative because I would take parts of before the game with assistant coaches, and I would have them go over every possible bad situation that could happen in the game. Okay, second period, both goalies get hurt. There's 18 minutes to play. We're leading by 2 goals. What do you do? 2 minutes left to play. We just get 2 penalties. 2 best penalty killers are in the penalty box. The next guy you want to send out for a face-off in our own end has hurt his knee. He's in the dressing room. Who do you put on the ice? And I used to have them go over these questions before a game. Sounds like I'm just creating negative responses in my mind, or I'm thinking bad thoughts. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm preparing. I'm preparing because if that situation really did occur in the game, as every once in a while they did, I didn't have to think about it now. I'd already thought about it. I already knew what my answer was going to be, and I knew I had time before the game where I could say something, and then one of my assistant coaches would say, yeah, but wouldn't you do this? Wouldn't you do that? And I go, oh yeah, maybe actually that is a better idea. I've had time to actually go through some scenarios and what my response would be. So if that showed up game time, I could make what I hoped was a clearer, better response rather than just a fast reaction first thing in my head and find out after the game, boy, that was a mistake, Trying to cut down as many mistakes as possible from reaction thinking and try to be as fully prepared for every situation as possible, hoping that none of them show up and that the game runs smoothly. And it's kind of the same thing I'm doing for you here. It's just kind of giving the year ahead I see coming as is being potentially projected. And it's just so that we can be prepared for it. It's just so that we can have a game plan. If it goes that way, here's how I'm going to be. Here's how I'm going to think. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to do it with. And if it doesn't happen, okay. If a less likely scenario happens, if Project Bluebeam fires up and the aliens land at the White House and that becomes our new story, okay, well, I put that as, on the 10% list. It's not off the table. It's been on the table for a lot of years, for example, a whole lot of this kind of stuff. But it's on the low likelihood. So I don't want to spend a lot of time preparing for something like that because the likelihood is so low. It's better to try to prepare for what are the most likely scenarios we're going to see hitting in the next 12 months. It's like if you live where I live right now, which is kind of stupid, but if you live where I live and it gets to be minus 20 and, 40, 50 centimeters of snow, then you got to be prepared for that. You've got to be prepared already in October for what's coming, at least mentally, that I got all this shoveling, I'm going to be isolated, I've got to have extra food supplied, it's going to be cold, do I have enough warm clothing for everything? You have to be prepared. If you just walk into this and all of a sudden, whoa, massive winter, what do I do? It's not going to go well. So you have to be as prepared as possible, particularly when things aren't smooth, when things are just wonderful and everything's running like a machine fabulously. Yeah, you just cruise along. Everything's great. But my guess is for most of the people watching right now, everything is not great and hasn't been great for a while. And don't expect that to change. Expect it to alter just in its way of difficulty. Be prepared for it. If it doesn't happen, great. So what? You just prepared for a likely scenario and the likely scenario didn't come. If an unlikely scenario comes and it's also not so great, react the best you can. If an unlikely scenario happens this next 12 months that's really great, really fantastic, then I think we'll all do fine adjusting to it. And I would be more than thrilled to come on here on April the 15th to talk about this wonderful new world we're in, and man, this is fantastic, and here's the way we're going to go forward with it. That would be great. But I think we better be prepared for the way things are really going to look. And so, at least mentally, we don't crack. See you guys in 2022 with the Paris expositions. and we'll go from there. Thanks for the last 18 months of support. We'll see you going forward. Cheers.